The desperate call. The vast expanse of space had never felt so oppressive to Kelifar, the lead scientist of the Zarthian Confederacy. His multifaceted eyes, evolved for detecting the slightest movements in the dense forests of his homeworld, now stared unblinking at the holographic display before him. Each pulsing red dot represented a world lost to the devourer swarms, a relentless tide of organic destruction that had been consuming the outer reaches of Zarthian space for the past solar cycle. High Commander, Kelfar's voice wavered as he addressed the imposing figure beside him. We've lost contact with the colony on Nithral. The Devourers have breached the planetary defense grid. High Commander Zarka, her iridescent scales dulled by exhaustion and worry, closed her inner eyelids in a gesture of deep sorrow. How many were we able to evacuate? Less than half the population, High Commander. The swarms arrived faster than our models predicted. The command center fell silent, the weight of another failure pressing down on every Zarthian present. They had fought, innovated, and sacrificed, but nothing seemed to slow the inexorable advance of the Devourers. Each encounter left them with fewer resources, fewer soldiers, and fewer hopes. Zarka's tail lashed in frustration, a rare display of emotion from a usually stoic leader. We cannot continue like this. Our people are dying, our worlds are falling, and our technology is failing us. We need help. The word hung in the air, alien and almost blasphemous to the proud Zarthians. For millennia, they had been the dominant force in this sector of the galaxy, their advanced biotechnology and sophisticated culture the envy of the few spacefaring races they had encountered. To admit they needed aid was to admit their own inadequacy. Kelfar's auxiliary limbs twitched nervously as he considered the implications. High Commander, are you suggesting we activate the beacon? The beacon was a relic of the early days of Zarthian space exploration, a powerful transmitter capable of sending a message across vast distances of space. It had never been used, partly out of fear of attracting hostile attention, but mostly out of the belief that the Zarthians would never need outside assistance. Zarka's compound eyes locked onto Kelfar's, her voice firm despite the gravity of the decision. We have no choice. Prepare the beacon. We will send a call for aid to anyone who can hear it. As the command center erupted into a flurry of activity, Kelthar couldn't shake the feeling that they were taking an irreversible step into the unknown. The message was crafted carefully, a distress call that explained their dire situation without revealing too much about Zarthian technology or weaknesses. With a final nod from Zarka, Kelthar activated the beacon. The message raced out into the cosmos, carrying with it the desperate hopes of an entire civilization. Days passed, then weeks, with no response. The Devourers continued their advance, and despair began to set in among the Zarthian leadership. It was during a particularly grim strategic meeting that the impossible happened. A transmission, origin unknown, cut through the somber atmosphere of the command center. This is Captain Elena Chen of the Earth Alliance vessel Horizon. We've received your distress call and are en route to your location. Hold on, help is coming. The message was short, but its impact was seismic. Kelfar's analytical mind raced with questions. Earth Alliance. Humans. These were terms unknown to Zarthian xenobiologists. How had an unknown species intercepted their message? And more importantly, what kind of help could they offer against a threat that had brought the mighty Zarthian Confederacy to its knees? High Commander Zarka, however, focused on the one thing that mattered. They responded, she said, her voice filled with a mix of relief and apprehension. Someone actually responded to our call. As word spread through the Zarthian worlds, a cautious optimism began to take hold. They knew nothing about these humans or their capabilities, but the simple fact that they were not alone in their fight against the Devourers kindled a spark of hope that had long been absent. Kelthar found himself both excited and terrified by the prospects. As a scientist, the opportunity to study a new spacefaring species was thrilling. As a Zarthian facing extinction, he couldn't help but wonder if they had just invited a new threat into their space. "High Commander," he said, turning to Zarka, "how should we prepare for their arrival?" Zarka's mandibles clicked thoughtfully. "We prepare as we always have, Kelfar, with caution, with strength, and with the hope that this decision will save our people. Alert all remaining Zarthian fleets. I want every available ship ready to meet these humans when they arrive." As the command center once again burst into action, Kelthar couldn't shake the feeling that the galaxy as they knew it was about to change forever. The Zarthians had called out into the void, and something had answered. Whether that answer would be their salvation or their doom remained to be seen. In the depths of space, unbeknownst to the anxious Zarthians, a fleet of ships unlike anything they had ever encountered was pushing their engines to the limit. Humanity, in all its chaotic, innovative glory, was coming, and they were bringing with them a determination to fight that would shock both the Zarthians and the Devourers alike. The stage was set for a clash of civilizations, a desperate battle against an implacable foe, and the dawn of a new era in galactic history. The humans had responded to the call for help, and nothing would ever be the same again. First contact and preparations. The Zarthian defense fleet hung in high orbit around their homeworld, a dazzling array of bioengineered ships that glowed with an inner bioluminescence. High Commander Zarka stood on the bridge of her flagship, the Radiant Claw, her eyes fixed on the swirling vortex of a spatial anomaly that had just formed at the edge of the system. "Incoming vessels," reported her sensor officer, his voice tight with anticipation. "Configuration unknown." They're unlike anything we've ever seen, High Commander." As if in response to his words, ships began to emerge from the vortex. They were angular, metallic constructs that seemed to absorb light rather than emit it, a stark contrast to the organic curves of Zarthian vessels. At their head was a massive ship that dwarfed even the Radiant Claw. "By the first egg," whispered Kelfar, who stood at Zarka's side. "What manner of beings could create such machines?" Before Zarka could respond, a transmission cut through the tense silence of the bridge. A holographic image flickered to life, revealing a bipedal creature with pale skin and dark hair tied back in a neat bun. Its eyes were forward-facing, like a predator's, but they held an intelligence and warmth that took Zarka by surprise. "This is Captain Elena Chen of the Earth Alliance flagship Horizon," the creature, the human, said. Its mouth moved in unfamiliar ways, but the words came through clearly in Zarthian, thanks to their advanced translation algorithms. "We're here in response to your distress call. I request permission to approach and discuss the situation face to face." Zarka's mandibles clicked rapidly, a sign of her inner turmoil. Everything about these humans was alien, from their ships to their appearance. Yet they had come, traversing vast distances to answer a plea for help. After a moment's hesitation, she made her decision. "Permission granted, Captain Chen. We welcome you to Zarthia Prime." The next few hours were a whirlwind of activity. A human delegation shuttled down to the planet's surface, while Zarthian scientists and diplomats scrambled to prepare for this unprecedented first contact. Kelfar found himself at the forefront of these preparations, his scientific curiosity overriding his initial trepidation. The meeting took place in the Grand Hive, the seat of Zarthian government. Captain Chen and her team entered the cavernous, organically shaped chamber with expressions of barely concealed wonder. Zarka noticed how their eyes darted about, taking in every detail of Zarthian architecture and biology. "High Commander Zarka," Chen said, inclining her head in what the Zarthians would later learn was a gesture of respect called a bow. "On behalf of the Earth Alliance and humanity as a whole, I thank you for your welcome. We're here to help in any way we can against the threat you face." What followed was a tense but productive exchange of information. The humans listened intently as Zarka and Kelthar explained the nature of the devourer swarms, hive-minded creatures that consumed all organic matter in their path, growing ever larger and more dangerous. "They adapt quickly," Kelthar explained, his auxiliary limbs gesticulating in agitation. Our bioweapons, our most advanced technology, they find ways to counter them all. We've been fighting a losing battle for too long." Captain Chen's face grew grave as she absorbed this information. She turned to one of her officers, a tall, dark-skinned human male. "Commander Okafor, your thoughts?" The man stepped forward, his movements precise and controlled. "Based on what we're hearing, these devourers sound similar to the locust swarms we faced in the Orion conflict. Different biology, of course, but similar tactics and adaptability." This casual mention of another interstellar conflict sent a ripple of surprise through the Zarthian delegation. These humans, newcomers to the galactic stage, had already faced and presumably defeated a threat similar to the Devourers. "You've encountered such beings before?" Zarka asked, unable to keep the hint of hope from her voice. Chen nodded. "We have, though on a smaller scale. But more importantly, we've developed technologies and tactics specifically designed to counter swarm-based enemies. With your permission, High Commander, we'd like to begin sharing this knowledge immediately." What followed was a flurry of activity that left even the highly organized Zarthians struggling to keep up. Human engineers and scientists integrated seamlessly with their Zarthian counterparts, sharing technologies that seemed to border on magic. Kelthar found himself working closely with a human scientist named Dr. Yuki Tanaka. Her expertise in nanotechnology opened up entirely new avenues of research that Kelthar had never even considered. "The key," Dr. Tanaka explained as they pored over holographic schematics, "is to fight adaptability with adaptability. Our nanobots can reconfigure themselves on the fly, countering the Devourer's biological adaptations in real time." Meanwhile, on the military front, Commander Okafor worked with Zarthian strategists to develop new battle plans. The humans introduced concepts like guerrilla warfare and asymmetric tactics, ideas that were foreign to the Zarthians' more straightforward approach to combat. "The Devourers rely on overwhelming force," Okafor explained, "but they're not creative. We can use that against them." As the days passed, a sense of cautious optimism began to spread through the Zarthian population. The presence of the humans, with their strange appearances and even stranger ideas, was a constant source of fascination and hope. But it wasn't all smooth sailing. Cultural misunderstandings abounded, and more than once, Zarka had to step in to mediate disputes between overzealous human engineers and traditionalist Zarthian craftsmen. The humans' reliance on artificial intelligence was particularly contentious, as the Zarthians viewed AI as a potential threat to organic life. Despite these challenges, progress was made at an astonishing pace. Within weeks, the first human Zarthian hybrid chips were ready for testing, combining the organic flexibility of Zarthian biotechnology with the raw power and adaptability of human engineering. As Zarka stood in the observation deck, watching the first of these new vessels undergo its trial runs, she felt a complex mix of emotions. Hope, certainly, for the first time in too long, but also a nagging worry about what these rapid changes would mean for her people and their way of life. Captain Chen joined her eyes reflecting the starlight as she gazed out at the hybrid ship. "Impressive, isn't it?" she said softly. "What our species can accomplish when we work together." Zarka's mandibles clicked in agreement. "Indeed. But tell me, Captain, why did you come? Why risk your lives for a species you've never met?" Chen was quiet for a moment before responding. "Because it was the right thing to do. And because humanity knows all too well what it's like to face extinction. We've been on the brink ourselves, more than once. We swore we'd never stand by and watch another species suffer the same fate if we could help it." As if to punctuate her words, alarms began to blare throughout the station. A sensor officer's voice came over the comm system, tight with urgency. "High Commander, Captain, we're detecting multiple Devourer swarms entering the system. They'll be upon us within hours." Zarka and Chen exchanged a look of grim determination. The theories, the plans, the new technologies, it was time to put them all to the test. As they rushed to the command center, Zarka felt a surge of something she hadn't experienced in a long time. Genuine hope for victory. The Devourers were coming, but this time, the Zarthians weren't facing them alone. Humanity stood with them, ready to fight. And if there was one thing the Devourers weren't prepared for, it was the unconventional, relentless, and often surprising nature of human warfare. The battle begins. The combined Zarthian human fleet hung in the inky void of space, a testament to the rapid cooperation between two vastly different species. Organic Zarthian vessels pulsed with bioluminescent light alongside the sleek, metallic human ships. At the center of the formation, the newly christened hybrid vessel Unity stood as a symbol of what could be achieved when two cultures came together in the face of adversity. On the bridge of the Radiant Claw, High Commander Zarka's compound eyes darted between holographic displays, each one showing a different aspect of the incoming Devourer swarm. Beside her, Captain Alina Chen of the Earth Alliance stood rigid, her face a mask of concentration. "They'll be within weapons range in 5 minutes," reported a Zarthian tactical officer, his voice tight with tension. Chen nodded, her eyes never leaving the tactical display. "Remember the plan," she said, her voice carrying across the neural link to all ships in the fleet. "We hit them hard and fast, but most importantly, we hit them smart. Adaptability is our advantage." As the swarm of Devourer ships entered the system, their biomechanical forms blotting out the stars, Zarka felt a familiar dread creeping up her spine. But this time, it was tempered by a new emotion: hope. "All ships, engage on my mark," Zarka commanded, her mandibles clicking with determination. 3, 2, 1, mark. The space between the two fleets erupted in a dazzling display of weaponry. Zarthian bioplasma lanced out alongside human railgun slugs and energy beams. The first wave of Devourer ships disintegrated under the onslaught, but more kept coming, an endless tide of chitinous horror. "They're adapting to our weapon frequencies," called out Kelithar from his science station, just as before. But this time, things were different. Initiating nanobot swarm, Dr. Yuki Tanaka's voice came over the comm. From the Unity, a cloud of microscopic robots burst forth, enveloping the nearest Devourer ships. Within seconds, the massive bioships began to falter, their organic components turned against them by the adaptive nanobots. "It's working," Kelithar exclaimed, his auxiliary limbs waving in excitement. "Their adaptation rate is slowing significantly." On the tactical channels, Commander Okafor's voice rang out, directing smaller, faster ships in hit-and-run attacks against the Devourer flanks. The human tactic of guerrilla warfare, so foreign to the Zarthians, was proving devastatingly effective against the straightforward, brutal force of the swarm. But the Devourers were not to be underestimated. A group of larger ships broke through the defensive line, heading straight for Zarthia Prime. Zarka felt her heart sink as she realized they couldn't reposition in time to intercept. "Horizon, moving to intercept," Chen's voice cut through the chaos. The massive human flagship surged forward, placing itself between the Devourers and the planet. "Captain, what are you doing?" Zarka demanded, her translator struggling to convey the mix of confusion and concern in her voice. "Buying you time," Chen replied grimly, "and showing you another human tactic. Okafor, you have tactical control." Chen out. Before anyone could protest, the Horizon accelerated towards the oncoming Devourers. For a moment, Zarka thought they were going to ram the enemy ships, but at the last second, the human vessel erupted in a blinding flash of light. "Electromagnetic pulse," Kelithar breathed in awe. "They've disabled their own systems to generate an EMP large enough to..." His words were cut off as the pulse wave expanded outward, washing over the Devourer ships. The biomechanical monstrosities shuddered and went dark, their delicate systems overloaded by the massive energy discharge. In the stunned silence that followed, Zarka found her voice. "All ships, focus fire on the disabled Devourer vessels. Don't let them recover." The combined fleet leaped into action, tearing into the vulnerable enemy ships with a vengeance. But Zarka's eyes were fixed on the horizon, now dark and drifting. "Get me a status report on the human flagship," she demanded. Long moments passed before a response came. "High Commander." Chen's voice crackled over the comm, noticeably strained but very much alive. "Horizon reporting. We're running on emergency power, but we're still in the fight. Did we get them?" A cheer went up across the Zarthian bridge, a sound that was quickly echoed throughout the fleet as the news spread. "You did, Captain," Zarka replied, unable to keep the warmth from her voice. "You most certainly did." The battle raged on, but the tide had turned. The Devourers, for the first time since they had appeared in Zarthian space, were on the defensive. Their attempts to adapt were consistently countered by the combined ingenuity of human and Zarthian technology. Hours passed, feeling like days to the weary combatants. But finally, mercifully, it was over. The last Devourer ship exploded in a spectacular burst of bioluminescence, leaving behind only debris and an overwhelming sense of relief. As the adrenaline of battle faded, the true cost became clear. Many ships, both human and Zarthian, had been lost. The survivors bore scars that would take time to heal. But they had won. For the first time in living memory, the Zarthians had decisively defeated a Devourer swarm. In the aftermath, as rescue operations began and damage reports flooded in, Zarka found herself on a shuttle heading towards the battered but intact horizon. As she docked and made her way to the bridge, she was struck by the alien yet familiar sights of a ship at war. Crew members of all ranks worked tirelessly to repair systems and tend to the wounded, their determination palpable. The bridge was a hive of activity, dominated by the commanding presence of Captain Chen. Despite the cuts and bruises visible on her face, she stood tall, issuing orders and coordinating with the fleet. As Zarka entered, Chen turned to her, a weary but triumphant smile on her face. "High Commander," she said, inclining her head in that curious human bow. "Welcome aboard the Horizon. I apologize for the mess." Zarka's mandibles clicked in what she hoped translated as amusement. "Captain Chen," she replied, extending her primary limbs in the Zarthian gesture of deep respect. "I believe we humans and Zarthians need to have a long conversation about acceptable tactical risks." Chen's smile widened. "I look forward to it. But first, I think both our peoples have earned a moment to celebrate. We've won a great victory here today." As Zarka looked out at the starfield, now blessedly free of Devourer ships, she felt a profound sense of change. The galaxy had shifted. Alliances had been forged in the heat of battle, and the future suddenly seemed brighter than it had in years. "Yes," she agreed, her compound eyes reflecting the starlight. "Yes, we have. And I have a feeling this is just the beginning." Turning the tide. In the weeks following the decisive battle over Zarthia Prime, a new sense of purpose energized both the Zarthians and their human allies. The victory, while significant, had not ended the war. Reports of Devourer activity in other sectors of Zarthian space continued to pour in. But now, for the first time in recent memory, there was hope. The Grand Chamber of the Hive Council, usually a place of solemn deliberation, buzzed with excited chittering as Zarthian leaders and human representatives gathered to plan their next moves. High Commander Zarka stood at the center, her iridescent scales gleaming under the bioluminescent lights. "The Devourers are regrouping," she announced, her voice carrying to every corner of the chamber. "But thanks to our human allies, we now have the means to take the fight to them." Captain Alina Chen stepped forward, her presence now a familiar and welcome sight in the hive. "We've been analyzing the data from our last engagement," she said, activating a holographic display. "The combination of Zarthian biotechnology and our adaptive systems proved more effective than we could have hoped. But we can do better." Kelthar, newly appointed as the head of the Joint Human-Zarthian Research Initiative, raised one of his auxiliary limbs. Indeed, he chittered excitedly. "We've been working on integrating human AI systems with our organic computing networks. The potential applications are, well, revolutionary. A murmur ran through the assembled Zarthians. The idea of artificial intelligence still made many of them uncomfortable, but the results of the human alliance were hard to argue with. Show them. Kelfar. Zarka encourage. With a complex series of gestures, Kelfar activated another hologram. This one showed a Zarthian ship, but unlike anything they had ever built before. Its organic curves were interspersed with sleek human design elements, and a pulsing core of light at its center suggested power beyond anything they had previously achieved. We call it the Symbiosis class, Kelfar explained. It combines the best of both our technologies. The organic components can heal and adapt, while the AI systems predict and counter devourer strategies faster than any organic mind could. And the weapons? Asked a grizzled Zarthian fleet commander, his scared carapace a testament to many hard-fought battles. In response, Dr. Yuki Tanaka stepped forward. "We've developed a new type of weapon," she said, her eyes shining with the excitement of scientific breakthrough. "It combines your bioplasma technology with our particle acceleration systems. The result is a weapon that can adapt its energy signature in real time, countering the devourer's rapid evolution." The chamber erupted in excited chittering and human murmurs. The potential of such a weapon was clear to all present. "How soon can we begin production?" Zarka asked, her compound eyes fixed on Kelfar and Tanaka. "We've already begun," Kelfar replied. "The first Symbiosis-class ship should be ready for trials within a solar cycle." As the meeting continued, strategies were formed and plans were made. The combined fleet would be reorganized, with human and Zarthian ships working in close concert. But more than that, cultural exchanges were proposed. Human scientists would study Zarthian biotechnology, while Zarthian engineers would learn the intricacies of human AI and machine learning. "We're not just fighting a war," Captain Chen said as the meeting drew to a close. "We're forging a partnership that could reshape this sector of the galaxy." The next few months were a whirlwind of activity. As the first Symbiosis-class ships rolled out of the orbital shipyards, joint human-Zarthian strike teams began hitting devourer outposts across the sector. The new weapons proved devastatingly effective, able to pierce even the most advanced devourer defenses. But it wasn't just military victories that marked this period. Cultural exchanges flourished as humans and Zarthians worked side by side. Humans marveled at the organic architecture of Zarthian cities, while Zarthians found themselves captivated by human art and music. Kelfar, in particular, formed a close working relationship with Dr. Tanaka. Together, they pushed the boundaries of what was possible when two radically different scientific traditions combined. "I never imagined I'd be reconfiguring the molecular structure of a living ship using quantum algorithms," Tanaka said one day, shaking her head in wonder as they worked on upgrading the Unity. Kelfar's mandibles clicked in amusement. "And I never thought I'd be using artificial intelligence to optimize bioplasma flow," he chittered back. "We make quite the team, don't we?" As victories mounted, the devourers began to change their tactics. Instead of all-out assaults, they resorted to hit-and-run attacks, trying to disrupt supply lines and isolated colonies. But the combined fleet was ready. Commander Okafor, now in charge of rapid response operations, had integrated Zarthian bioships into his tactical doctrines. The result was a force that could appear seemingly out of nowhere, strike with devastating precision, and disappear again before the devourers could mount an effective counterattack. "We're beating them at their own game," Okafor reported during a high-level briefing. "They've always relied on adaptability and surprise. Now we're the ones keeping them off balance." But the war was far from over. As the combined fleet pushed deeper into devourer-controlled space, they encountered ever more desperate and dangerous variations of the swarm. Entire planets had been consumed, turned into massive organic factories churning out new and terrifying forms of devourer ships. The true test came at the Battle of Nithril, the Zarthian colony that had fallen in the early days of the war. The planet, once a vibrant world of sweeping plains and towering forests, was now a grotesque, pulsating mass of devourer biomatter. By the first egg, Zarka breathed as the fleet dropped out of FTL at the edge of the system. What have they done to it? The scene that greeted them was like something out of a nightmare. The planet's surface roiled and churned, occasionally disgorging massive devourer ships, unlike anything they had encountered before. These new vessels were the size of small moons, bristling with weapons and radiating an aura of palpable malevolence. All ships, battle stations. Chen's voice rang out across the fleet. This is it, people. Everything we've worked for comes down to this moment. As the massive devourer constructs lumbered towards them, the combined fleets sprang into action. Symbiosis-class ships darted forward, their adaptive weapons tearing into the devourer defenses. Human carriers launched swarms of fighters, while Zarthian bioships released clouds of microscopic organisms designed to eat through devourer hulls. The battle was fierce, with losses mounting on both sides. For every devourer ship they destroyed, it seemed two more took its place. The Unity, now the flagship of the combined fleet, took a direct hit that sent it spiraling out of formation. We can't keep this up. Kelthar's voice crackled over the comm from the Unity's engineering section. The symbiosis core is destabilizing. One more hit like that and... His words were cut off as another blast rocked the ship. For a heart-stopping moment, it seemed like the Unity would break apart. But then, something extraordinary happened. The ship's organic components, infused with human nanobots and guided by the AI core, began to reconfigure themselves. The damaged sections regrew at an astonishing rate, but in new and unexpected configurations. Kelthar, what's happening? Zarka demanded from the Radiant Claw. I'm not sure, came the scientist's odd reply. The ship is evolving, adapting in ways we never programmed. It's beautiful. As they watched in amazement, the Unity transformed, its weapons reconfigured, combining in ways neither humans nor Zarthians had envisioned. And then, with a pulse of energy that temporarily blinded every sensor in the fleet, it fired. The beam that lanced out from the Unity was like nothing they had ever seen. It cut through the devourer ships like they were made of paper, not stopping until it struck the corrupted surface of Nithril itself. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the planet's surface began to ripple and dissolve. The devourer biomass that had consumed the world started to break down at a molecular level. It's a purification beam. Dr. Tanaka's excited voice came over the comm. The ship somehow combined our technologies to create a weapon that doesn't just destroy the devourers, it cleanses them from existence. As the remaining devourer ships fell into disarray, the combined fleet pressed their advantage. Within hours, the battle was over. Nithril, while forever changed, was free of the devourer taint. In the aftermath, as the fleet regrouped and began the process of securing the system, Zarka found herself once again standing beside Captain Chen on the bridge of the Unity. I think, Chen said slowly, a note of wonder in her voice, that we may have just turned the tide of this war for good. Zarka's mandibles clicked in agreement. Indeed, my friend. But I suspect we've done far more than that. We've opened the door to a future neither of our species could have imagined alone. As they looked out at the stars, both leaders knew that while the war was not over, its outcome was no longer in doubt. The devourers would be defeated, and in their wake, a new alliance would rise. An alliance that promised to change the face of the galaxy forever. Aftermath and new alliances. The great hall of the Zarthian Hive Council, once a somber chamber of worried deliberations, now pulsed with an energy that hadn't been felt in generations. Representatives from every Zarthian world stood alongside a diverse array of human delegates. The air was thick with a mixture of chittering excitement and hushed human whispers as High Commander Zarka took her place at the central podium. Fellow Zarthians, honored human allies, she began, her voice carrying easily through the vast chamber. Today, we gather not just to celebrate victory, but to chart a course for a future none of us could have imagined when this war began. It had been 6 cycles since the Battle of Nithril, the turning point that had broken the back of the Devourer threat. In the time since, joint human-Zarthian fleets had methodically cleansed system after system of the Devourer presence. The enemy that had once seemed unstoppable was now in full retreat, fleeing to the farthest reaches of the galaxy. Captain Elena Chen, now Admiral Chen of the Earth Alliance Expeditionary Force, stepped forward to join Zarka at the podium. The human's presence, once alien and unsettling to many Zarthians, now felt as natural as the bioluminescent glow of their homeworld's forests. "What we've achieved together goes beyond military victory," Chen said, her eyes scanning the assembled crowd. "We've proven that diversity isn't just beneficial, it's essential. The combination of Zarthian biotechnology and human artificial intelligence didn't just defeat the Devourers, it's opening up possibilities that will propel both our species into a new era of exploration and discovery." A holographic display flickered to life above the podium, showing the latest iteration of the Symbiosis-class ships. These vessels, once experimental prototypes, had evolved into something that defied easy classification. Part machine, part organism, they represented the perfect fusion of human and Zarthian ingenuity. Kelfar, his carapace now bearing the intricate markings of a high scientist, gestured to the display with his auxiliary limbs. "The adaptive capabilities we've unlocked are unprecedented," he explained, his voice tinged with barely contained excitement. "These ships can reconfigure themselves for any environment, from the crushing pressures of gas giants to the vacuum of intergalactic space. The potential for exploration is limitless." Dr. Yuki Tanaka, now sporting several Zarthian bioimplants that allowed her to interface directly with their organic technology, nodded in agreement. "And it's not just about ships," she added. "The medical applications alone are revolutionary. We're on the verge of curing diseases that have plagued both our species for millennia." As the scientific presentation continued, detailing breakthrough after breakthrough, Zarka felt a swell of pride. The alliance born of desperation had blossomed into something beautiful and enduring, but there were still challenges to face. "While the Devourer threat has been largely contained," Zarka said, bringing the focus back to more immediate concerns, "we cannot become complacent. There are still pockets of resistance, and we must remain vigilant." Commander Okafor, his hair now streaked with gray from years of high-stress combat operations, stepped forward. "We've established a joint rapid response force," he reported. "Combining the stealth capabilities of Zarthian bioships with human AI tactical systems, we can respond to any Devourer resurgence within hours, anywhere in the sector." The assembly chittered and murmured in approval. The idea of Devourers returning was still a source of deep-seated fear for many, but the confidence of the military leadership was reassuring. As the meeting progressed, discussion turned to the future. Plans were laid out for joint colonization efforts, scientific expeditions to unexplored regions of the galaxy, and cultural exchange programs to further strengthen the bonds between humans and Zarthians. "We stand at a crossroads," Admiral Chen said as the session neared its end. "The threat that brought us together has been defeated, but the alliance we forged is too valuable, too full of potential, to simply let it fade away." Zarka's mandibles clicked in agreement. "Which is why we propose the formation of a permanent interstellar council," she announced. "A governing body where humans, Zarthians, and any other species who wish to join us can work together for the betterment of all." The proposal was met with thunderous approval. The idea of a multi-species alliance, once unthinkable to the isolationist Zarthians, now seemed not just possible but necessary. As the formal proceedings concluded, and the assembly broke into smaller groups for more detailed discussions, Zarka found herself standing with Chen near one of the hall's massive bioorganic windows. The view of Zarthia Prime's twin moons, now home to thriving human settlements, never failed to fill her with a sense of wonder at how much had changed. "Did you ever imagine it would turn out like this?" Chen asked, her voice soft with reflection. "When you sent out that distress call, did you ever think it would lead to all of this?" Zarka's compound eyes flickered in the Zarthian equivalent of a smile. Never, she admitted. I hoped for aid, for a chance at survival. I never dreamed we'd gain not just allies, but friends, partners in a journey that's only just beginning. Chen nodded, her gaze fixed on the stars beyond the moons. You know, there's an old human saying, united we stand, divided we fall. I used to think it only applied to humanity. Now I see it applies to all of us, across the entire galaxy. As they stood there, a human and a Zarthian, former strangers turned trusted friends, Zarka felt a profound sense of optimism for the future. The Devourers had been a terrible threat, but in facing that threat together, they had discovered something far greater than victory. They had found a new way forward, a path to a future brighter than either species could have achieved alone. Come, my friend, Zarka said at last, gesturing with her primary limbs towards the bustling groups of humans and Zarthians mingling in the hall. We have a new galaxy to build. As they rejoined the discussions, adding their voices to the excited plans being formed, both leaders knew that this was more than just the end of a war. It was the dawn of a new age, one of cooperation, discovery, and limitless possibility. The stars, once a realm of danger and the unknown, now beckoned with the promise of adventures yet to come. Humanity had answered the call for help, and in doing so, had not just saved the Zarthians, but had helped forge a new destiny for both their peoples. Together, they would face whatever challenges the universe had in store, united in their diversity, stronger for their differences, and bound by the unbreakable ties of friendship and shared purpose. The story of the humans and the Zarthians was far from over. In fact, it was just beginning.